Welcome to Pilates Teacher's Manual, your guide to becoming a great Pilates teacher. I'm Olivia, and I'll be your host. Join the conversation and the Pilates community on Instagram at Pilates Teacher's Manual, and visit buymeacoffee.com/Olivia Podcasts to support the show. Today's chapter starts now. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited to be on with Claire Mockridge today. She is incredible, a Pilates teacher. She specializes in pelvic floor dysfunction and really focuses her efforts on teaching teachers, not just how to work with pelvic floor dysfunction, but also how to grow in their careers, find the clients they want. She does some business adventuring with them as well. She's also the host of Pelvicpreneur Podcast, which if you love this podcast, you would love her podcast as well. Talking about business, talking about pelvic floor stuff. Absolutely awesome. You should check it out. So Claire, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for the invite, Olivia. I'm really excited to get started.
Yes. So the first thing I always like to know is, how did you first find Pilates?
You know what? I really had to search the memory banks to answer this question. And it is because I think my very first experience of Pilates was back in my early 20s. I was in a corporate sort of situation, and you probably could have given me an award for the amount of sitting I was doing at that time of my life. And I got back pain very quickly, actually. And so then I went to book some sessions with a chiropractor in my local area. And it wasn't until afterwards, if you sort of see what I mean, that I realized that she was doing reformer Pilates with me. But it was actually a good 15 years after that I actually decided to qualify or even enter the fitness industry and do my Pilates qualification. But that's my very first taster of Pilates.
Well, excellent. I've found that that's a bit of a theme, that there are some professional sitters out there who end up with a lot of pain or with carpal tunnel or with just stuff going on because, our bodies are not really designed to sit for 18 hours a day. And then what inspired you to teach after that taste of Pilates?
Well, yeah, again, I'd like to sort of say it was like this instructor or that instructor, but actually I had to qualify as a Pilates teacher really due to necessity. I entered the fitness industry via the personal trainer, jumpy aerobics body conditioning route. And I got injured very quickly. I got plantar fasciitis from high impact work, and Pilates was sort of really a good option, I suppose, really, because I had actually decided that high impact's not my future. It's not good for me. That's not healthy. And so what I actually decided to do was I think I need to pivot somewhat here and find a client group that's low impact. And that's when I actually decided, pregnancy and postnatal, that's really what I need to do. So that was like a saving grace. And let's face it, actually, Pilates is really, really beneficial for the pre and postpartum client. So they were kind of it's a natural sort of progression for them, as well as my business sort of grew. But yeah, I got plantar fasciitis very quickly. It took me about 18 months to actually get over it. And no word of a lie, I actually had foot pain for 5+ years. And Pilates was useful in the sense that I was no longer jumping about like an idiot, obviously. But I can remember teaching 3 back-to-back Pilates classes on a Tuesday, and entering that third hour of teaching, my feet were on fire. They were just burning, and it just, I just felt a bit of a fraud, if I'm honest, really. So yeah, I know we're going to kind of get to that perhaps in the next sort of question, but it was necessity for me. And the other thing I will point out as well, the reason I decided to teach Pilates is because it sells. Because when I qualified, I think it was about 2009, something like that, medical professionals, midwives in my network there, manual therapists, they're all referring their own clients to Pilates. And I thought, I'm on a bit of a winner here. So yeah, and let's face it, Pilates is still a financially, good investment, as far as the qualification goes, because it lives with you forever. You're always going to get that return on your investment. Yeah, so marketing wise, it's a fairly easy sell, and I I made a lot of money from teaching Pilates classes as well. So good business decision.
I did notice, and I did my certification, several years after that in 2017, but it was the type of thing where I was teaching yoga, but, clients aren't interested really in private yoga sessions there's so much on YouTube, there's so much on DVDs that it's just so saturated that, you're just another kind of face, but Pilates does kind of set you apart and I mean, the training itself is much more intensive. Like you do have a lot more that you can offer as well as I think as a Pilates teacher.
Well, I think Pilates actually, as a qualification, like everyone should do it if they're in the movement industry, because I think it's like, it gives you that huge like foundation of exercise repertoire, but also gives you the freedom to be incredibly creative. There are lots of different variations of hands and knees, for example. There are lots of different things that you can do to a shoulder bridge and those sorts of things as well. So I think it gives you the confidence to be creative with a movement modality as well.
So what marked the big transition for you that you were like, I am teaching and enjoying teaching? I'm assuming that you're having a good time teaching, but how did you decide like, no, I'd actually rather work with teachers, or I'd actually like to pivot, kind of once again?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to bring everything back to the foot. So I'm going to say the foot and the feet a lot in this interview, actually, because it's an integral part of movement. So going back to my 5 years of foot pain, the traditional approach of like rehabilitating someone out of foot pain is go and see a physio, do the exercises. Then if the client isn't actually getting many results, then push them to an insoles orthotics person. So I had probably at least 3 sets of custom-made insoles done for my feet over the course of 5 years. And it was a pinnacle moment for me, actually, when my partner and I were on holiday in Croatia, where if you've never been to Croatia, just a quick history or geography lesson here, most of the beaches are pebble. They are not sand. And it was that moment where I'm like stepping off the beach towel in bare feet to go and walk to the water's edge, excruciating pain. I can't actually walk. It's like so incredibly uncomfortable and painful. Every step was like making me jump into the air like 3 miles. It was not pleasant. And so, yeah, foot pain was really the transition for me to go and seek out a different approach. And this is actually when I discovered the work of Katie Bowman. So I'm one of her restorative exercise specialists. I literally bought one of her books off Amazon, worked through the suggestions of the exercises and bits and pieces from there. And I started actually like fusing the foot first full body approach that she sort of teaches inside her biomechanics training to then actually apply it to the pre and postnatal client who often have pelvic floor dysfunction. So the foot, immobility of the foot, the fact that the muscles, the intrinsic muscles within the foot are incredibly like weak. Like if you had I didn't actually have a photograph of my feet way back when I was in the depths of foot pain, but I wish I had. It's a good benchmark. But the muscles on the arch, on the inside of my left foot had become so atrophied. And I could actually like week on week see the muscles building themselves back up with this work that I was doing. And I was able to wean myself off, just like a child, wean myself off the insoles and then transition into barefoot shoes. And I just became a foot nerd from there. But there is a huge connection between the foot and pelvic floor function. And I think that is like where I was heading from there. And I really enjoyed it. My clients really enjoyed it. And I went, I've got to get this out to the world. So that's when I started teaching teachers to fix their clients' vaginas, etc. from there.
I mean, that's so wonderful. And I love that you have this personal connection, because I find that that's really the most inspiring thing for you, because you've been there and you know when things aren't working in your foot, and especially pain is a gigantic motivator to make a change. Tell me more about this transition from teaching full-time to either workshops, or even what inspired you to do this podcast. Like, because you took your teaching and you're still teaching, but it's different than, group classes and sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I kind of actually had like two businesses, two income streams for a long time. It's been 8 years actually that I've been teaching teachers in some capacity. If it's just where I very first started out doing in-person workshops, remember those? Seem like a distant memory now, don't they? But yeah, I used to kind of tour the country actually here in the UK where I'm based actually, and I did pregnancy and postnatal exercise and marketing workshops for instructors. And so, yeah, that was a good introduction, but I was still teaching my fitness and Pilates classes as my main sort of source of income. And as I say, when I started going a little bit more all in with the teacher training, I then decided, actually, I don't think I can continue teaching my fitness and Pilates classes full time anymore. So it was actually at the end of 2019. This is pre-COVID here, people. It's like I had a premonition that something bad was going to happen in 2020. And I quit my classes. And then I've actually, as I say, kind of gone all in with the teacher training, Your Pelvic Matters sort of programs and stuff like that. And I'd listened to podcasts for a long time. When you sort of think back to like some of the people that that have been in your earbuds for a long time, like providing that little weekly dose of inspiration and that sort of stuff. And I wanted to give back to the pelvic floor dysfunction industry. And that's why I decided to kind of brand myself, I guess really as the Pelvicpreneur, because my podcast, it sort of bridges the gap a little bit. I'm filling a void in some aspects actually on my podcast, because there are pelvic floor podcasts, but they're more for the physical therapists that do the internal examination sort of stuff with their pelvic floor clients. Whereas us over here, we stay on the outside of the body and we treat like exercise and that sort of stuff external, whether it's like movement or manual therapy of some description, but we don't put our head torch on and go in. And I feel like because I've been in the trenches teaching fitness and Pilates for like 15 years, by the time I launched my podcast, I know what it's like. It's not all rosy all the time. And sometimes I do kind of have some moments where like I get real and, sort of just share some of the like really annoying clients that I've worked with. Like the teacher trainer community needs someone like us, to be able to be that voice of reason and just be that voice of inspiration. And like, you can almost pretend that you're a friend into someone's ear, sort of on a weekly podcast show as well. And I do, you must get DMs and messages, from fellow trainers all the time. It like really lights you up when someone reaches out and says, thanks so much, you've inspired me, or whatever. It's really quite touching.
And I think that you're addressing not just the gap in terms of like working externally, working through exercise, but also this gap that in teacher training, you're prepared to like teach exercises, but at least my teacher training, there wasn't a marketing component. There wasn't a like how to run a business or how to say no to clients. It was just like, all right, now go teach. And it's like, well, who do I like to teach? And how do I like to teach? And what kind of schedule do I want? And how do I get people in my class? All of these things. I think that the business and the marketing side are super important, especially if you're going like the way of teaching your own thing and not necessarily working in a studio or even being in a studio, but doing workshops for yourself. That's huge.
Yeah. And I think like the Pilates industry as well, or anyone that works in movement, we're sort of like qualification collectors. We like booking ourselves on anatomy-based courses, but if you're not going to get a return on investment of that qualification, just really do think twice. Is it like how much of that you're only going to be using 10% of that new knowledge? Because inside, this is, as I say, like inside my programs, all of them have business and marketing skills, because I want to make sure that you're not just booking on another qualification and then not being able to sell it, because, that kind of keeps the lights on, doesn't it really?
I mean, especially as teachers, because I'm just thinking about group classes. It's just, you've got to, depending on your studio situation, of course, every place is different. I'm in a city, so I have access to tons of people all the time in every neighborhood I go to. But I have listeners who are in like rural Australia, and it's like, okay, now I've got this thing. Like, what do I do? Like, how do I get the word out and things like that? Hi there. I hope you're enjoying today's chapter so far. There's great stuff coming up after the break too. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening and visit buymeacoffee.com/Olivia Podcasts to support the show. There you can make a one-time donation or become a member for as little as $5 a month. Membership comes with some awesome perks, including a shout out in the next episode, a monthly newsletter, a monthly Zoom call with me, and more. You can also visit links.oliviabioni.com/affiliates to check out some sweet deals on products I use and love. Now back to the show. So what is your advice for teachers, or maybe things that you've seen being a teacher for so long and now working with teachers? What would solve the problems of Pilates teachers?
Yeah. Well, do you want me to sort of answer that as it pertains to more like the pelvic floor dysfunction client? Because I've definitely got some points to sort of share there.
Yeah, no, let's go there. That's your specialty.
Yeah, okay, cool. Because that's my niche. Yeah, so I'll talk about that. We've had enough of the foot, but that's going to come back in here, people. So take your shoes off, barefoot shoes, if you're wearing those. But yeah, I suppose some of the things I would say that I've learned as a result of rehabilitating many, many clients with pelvic floor dysfunction, I'm almost like embarrassed to say it, but it's not exercise that's going to solve their problems. And I think this is a big missing link in solving pelvic floor dysfunction. So when I say it's not exercise, I'm actually talking about lifestyle factors that affect pelvic floor dysfunction. So excessive sitting, not walking, the shoes that someone's wearing, the actual the body, not what I call them body casts, which is like the clothing that someone's working. So, when they say like go niche, yeah, I'm even more niche than just pelvic floor dysfunction. Love me a prolapse. The clients with prolapses are the ones that get the best results. But to give you an example of a body cast for a pelvic floor dysfunction client, it'll be something like skinny jeans. All right. Prolapse is a pressure issue. So if they've got a really tight waistband that's pulling their abdominals in, there's only so much displacement of pressure, incorrect displacement of pressure there. So that's an example of a body cast. Belts, underwire bras, those sorts of things. Anything that's going to stop the body parts moving through their full range of motion, even like comfortable clothes. When you like put a t-shirt on, you're constantly adjusting it at the collar or something like that. You get that damn thing off and put something else on. Or, obviously during COVID here, we're all sort of like in our sweatpants all the time. So there's probably going to be some benefits here to those with prolapse, and a natural sort of progression there. But yeah, I would say don't focus on the exercise. That's kind of tip one. And I think we need to, with pelvic floor dysfunction clients, get them off their back and standing more. So yeah, if you're not doing like a lot of standing exercises or standing work, or actually even teaching your clients how to stand more optimally, you're kind of doing them a slight sort of disservice as well. The listeners might be intrigued when I say this as well. I have not prescribed or cued a Kegel in 6+ years. So if you don't know what a Kegel is, that is the squeeze, release, draw up and hold isolated contraction of the pelvic floor muscles. So in like old Pilates terminology, it would have been like the zip up and hollow type cues that would have been used. I don't even cue engage your core. So therefore I don't cue squeeze your vag, whatever you jellyfish. I mean, it's been such a long time, I can't even remember what the cues would have been that I used. So I'm just saying, I'm not anti-Kegel. There's definitely a place for them, but I tend to attract the clients that have been over-Kegeling and actually tightened and weakened their pelvic floor. And then when they sort of find my approach, they're like, oh, angels start singing, and they're like, wow, this person knows their stuff, and this is something different. And so there's that. And then I would also look at the foot. Okay. So if just start observing your client's feet. because they will tell you a story, no question. Even if it's like the teeniest like start of a bunion that's visible, or a really gnarled bunion, yeah, I can tell you now that that person is not walking as optimally as the person without bunions. I mean, sometimes there is a genetic trait of bunions, but it's quite small as it pertains to like a genetic sort of strain. More often than not, though, bunions are caused by incorrect footwear. So tight shoes, heeled shoes, putting too much pressure. But yeah, there's a huge connection between gait and pelvic floor function or pelvic floor length. So yeah, do start looking at your client's feet. And I think it's great to collect qualifications. But the other thing as well, right? I tried to use Pilates to rehabilitate my clients with pelvic floor dysfunction. Limited results, people. And it was just demoralizing. So I'm just going to kind of say that I don't really believe that one exercise modality in isolation will actually rehabilitate any client's problems. So fitness fusion is definitely the future. So, gather the cream of the crop of all of your qualifications and merge them together into this fitness fusion to help your clients would be my best advice there.
I think we're seeing that beyond just like one modality. For me, even broader, it's like just having multiple languages to speak to people, because to some people, yoga is just like, oh yeah, this breathing and this like mental centering that I'm doing is really connecting. For some people, it's like, no, I want you to talk about the muscles, and like even, now I'm also studying motor learning theory, and like talking about the muscles isn't super useful necessarily, but for some people, that's the language that they speak. And like, that's the way that you connect with them. And just the fact that you have like this big, people call it like a toolbox. I kind of think of it like Santa's sack, and you're just like have this like massive bag of tricks. Like it's not just a toolbox, it is a sack full of presents, and you can just like pull out these things and these qualifications. And like you said, the fact that you're able to use them is much more important than having them. You can have them, but if you can't use them, then have a nice wall of diplomas.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But also make money from them, people. Okay. So just let them collect dust on the wall there. You're going to bring them down and dust them off and use them. But yeah, I was also going to kind of say, really, Pilates, I touched on this earlier, it like gives you that creativity. But I tell you what, also Pilates provides you with not just the foundation and the creativity, but it's also like the permission to fuse other modalities into it. Now, obviously, if you were trained in a classical sense, we don't want to be like fiddling with that. That's your bag. But there must be something else on your timetable that appeals to the masses, or appeals to, the back pain client or the knee pain client, or a niche within a niche, if you kind of see what I'm saying. So that you're then providing a really beneficial master of everything type approach. Because you're gonna think about kind of exercise and education as not just benefiting you, but benefiting your client as well.
So I am loving all of this. You are just like full. I can see that this is where your passion is. And I'm so glad that you've niched to the niche, because I mean, this is fantastic, and stuff that, even doing like pre or postnatal trainings that like we don't always get this kind of business side of things. So I love that you're offering this to people that you work with, because it's like, it's funny. Like I did an episode earlier where I was talking about, career paths. And I was like, well, I don't want to talk like all about money, but like part of it is about money. Like you're making a living, whether this is your full-time thing or your part-time thing. Not all of us have the luxury of just like doing it because you love it. Like you also need to eat. And so finding that balance of course you want to help people, but like also like getting the word out. And like I was reading that you're also talking about, it's not just, raising your rates. It can be raising your rates, but it's not just raising your rates. It's also, tailoring your services in a way that you're attracting big ticket clients or those sort of things, where it's like a package beyond, just exchanging your time for money. I teach this class, I'm paid this much, and then that's it. If I don't teach, I also don't make money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I suppose there's kind of three things that my teaching within the teacher training community provides. The first thing is like simplifying what it is you're prescribing your clients. Take myself back 100 years ago when I first qualified in Pilates. I did actually give my personal training clients too many exercises to do. So I know one of the biggest pain points with Pilates instructors is if only the client would do their homework. All right. How about you take a little leaf out of your own book here, or page out of your own book? How about you give them fewer exercises to do? Simplify it. So if you're giving clients 8 exercises, I'm going to challenge you here today to knock that down to 5. 5 is a much smaller number. Yeah. But the chances of them actually doing all 5 exercises is going to be broader. Okay. So that would be the first thing. The other thing I realized actually, because obviously I have a niche client group and they all sort of come to me with similar things. All right. So they all have foot immobility. Some of them have foot pain. They all have eye-wateringly tight hamstrings. And they all have glutes that have been on holiday for several centuries. All right. So if I could just summarize how to rehabilitate clients with the full body approach, it would be systemizing. All right. So I covered in that first point is simplifying. So cut down what it is you're doing. Don't overload. Don't overwhelm. I keep it simple. Okay. And then the second thing, as I said, is kind of more the systematizing type thing. So because the client that's coming to see me all is having similar imbalances, similar dysfunction in their different major body parts and muscles and things, I was actually able through guinea pig testing of my own clients to put levels of exercises together. So I've got foundational exercises, intermediate and advanced exercises. You are never going to give an advanced exercise to someone on appointment 1. And it's looking actually through the journey of the client. In fact, you don't even need that many exercises because it's the lifestyle factors that you need to sort of really look at. So that's the second sort of thing. So is there some way that you could make it easier on yourself by prescribing similar exercises to the same client? And that's why niching down is so useful, because you end up almost doing it on autopilot. They've done the first 5 exercises. Appointment 2, we know we're probably going to introduce at least number 6 and at least 7, and then we start to play a little bit after that. But it's can you get a plan? Can you get something together if you're treating the same types of dysfunction and or the same types of, sort of clients? So that is simplify and systemize. And the third thing is the big one that we don't like to talk about, and that is selling. Because if you can't sell, you have to get comfortable with selling. But, you if this is the first time you have experienced the foot first full body approach to pelvic floor dysfunction, that, I'm sort of saying I haven't prescribed a Kegel 6+ years. You're like, where do I sign? It sells itself, doesn't it? And I think, that's all I would say there. The three S's when it comes to pelvic floor dysfunction for clients with the full body way.
Well, this is fantastic. Where can listeners find you? I will link to all of your stuff in the show notes, but if you can tell me a little bit about what the courses you're offering. They are virtual, which I am trying to silver lining this pandemic, and I am loving all of these, online offerings. The fact that you can take class in Spain, in England, in, Australia, across the country. I just started working with an online studio that has teachers in DC and New York and California, and just we can all be part of the thing together. So first of all, I love that. But please tell me about your adventures and how we can continue learning.
Yeah, sure. So I guess some good starting point would be to head over to your podcast app and subscribe to the Pelvicpreneur Podcast. So if you'd like to hear more about me, my journey, and just general talk about vaginas and stuff like that, I'm your woman. So do go and check that out. And Instagram's probably a good place to connect with me, because I do put some polarizing content out that makes you take a little bit of a shot intake of breath every now and again. So if you like someone who tells it as it is or calls you out in this industry and also provides you with some helpful advice, as I say, at Claire Mockridge is probably the best place to hang out with me. I answer all my own DMs, as I mentioned there, so it's not a robot that you're talking to. So just know also that approachable is my middle name. So if you want to reach out on any sort of issue to do with your Pilates business or whatever, I'm certain I can kind of help you. Via the Instagram bio, there's actually a fantastic resource that's available for pelvic floor Pilates instructors. So it's an online masterclass, and it's really for Pilates instructors who want a bit more time freedom. So if you want to work the hours that you want to work without having to attract unmotivated pelvic floor clients who expect instant results from you, go and check that out.
Excellent. Is there anything else that you want to throw out or share about your adventurings?
Well, I suppose I'm on a bit of a journey this year to kind of get clients to, or get teacher trainers particularly, to think about boundaries with their clients. Think about, some of those like icky things. Could you get rid of someone off your timetable? Toxic clients, the energy vampires. That's one big thing that I don't like to see. You don't need to be like pushed around by your clients. It's your business. You became self-employed for yourself. So maybe setting some boundaries. And I guess my second piece of advice is, if you have not raised your rates in 10 years, or even indeed 5 years, have some words with yourself on that as well, because you are worth so much more than $5 an hour, £5 an hour, whatever it is. So maybe have a little think about that.
Claire, I am so glad that I was able to connect with you. And thank you so much for just dropping mad wisdom. I really do recommend checking out her masterclass and her podcast, just full of wisdom and really doable things to make your life a happier version of life. Like, I absolutely love it. And I think you will too. So thanks so much for hopping on today from across the pond.
Thank you so much for having me, Olivia. It's been really great fun.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for listening to this week's chapter of Pilates Teacher's Manual, your guide to becoming a great Pilates teacher. Check out the podcast Instagram at Pilates Teacher's Manual, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen. For more Pilates goodness, check out my other podcast, Pilates Student's Manual, available everywhere you listen to podcasts. The adventure continues. Until next time.